back in the bad old days, and I'm talking about probably about the 80s, 70s, 80s, when they had old-fashioned mechanical meters. They still have the same meters still in use, but I think they've got protective devices in them now. But there's a device called a retarder that was sold in the black market. And if this is a meter, the traditional, this is based on the traditional British meter. I'm not sure how well it would work with other meters. It certainly wouldn't work with digital meters, the actual electronic digital meters. They're all they got wise to it. They put systems in, including things to detect when it had been, when they'd been tampered with this device and to move little flags out. But the gist is that it would make your meter run backwards when you connected the retarder. And all you had to do was that you got a black box from the supplier, and it's so shady. If there was a copper pipe in the vicinity, I really don't know why I did it this way, there was a wire came out and clipped onto the copper pipe with a alligator clip. And then there was a couple of big leads that you actually stuffed up either side the meter, and then the meter would spin backwards. It would either spin forward or backwards. Spinning forwards at high speed is bad. Spinning backwards at high speed is probably better. But these things were absolute death traps for so many reasons. And the way they worked was this. Your electricity meter these traditional electricity meters have two coils. One is the current sense coil, and it goes from live in to live out. And then you've got your neutral block there as well that the cables just loop out of. So the main supply comes in, it loops into live in, goes into neutral, comes back out of neutral, comes out live out and goes to your distribution board. So these things measured two variables. They measured the current flowing from live in to live out, but they also had a coil that measured from live to neutral. So that was the voltage reference, so it saw 240 or whatever the voltage was, so it would accurately meter. So what these devices did was they had a transformer inside which had a very small number of turns, so it was low voltage, very high current, and then a normal 240 volt primary. And that would be bridged across there from one of the live feeds. And what happened was that when this transformer was powered at 240 volts, and that's what the earth connection was for, I really don't know why they did it that way. It must have just been, I haven't a clue, it just says death trap to me. When you powered up this winding, it would induce a low voltage but very high current in this one, and that would then get fed back through the meter. Now, the meter has a very low resistance because obviously it's designed to handle high current of the house without heating up. But the meter, because it would see the normal load going through, but also because it was a closed loop of this transformer and the sense coil in there, it would pass the current through, and when you passed it out antiphase to what the meter would turn the meter forwards, it would actually spin it backwards. And the meter would still see 240 volts, but it would see this massive current flowing back the way through it. And that's what spun them backwards. And these things had a couple of slight drawbacks for the naive, which there were a lot of accidents with them. For a start, people had to know where to shove the wires, and if you're just selling one of these out the market to Joe Blogs, the first thing they're going to do, they're just going to poke up random terminals. If they poked it up between live and neutral, then this thing is just like a big piece of heavy wire wrapped around that. It's super high current, and it would just literally blow the meter up. The meters would be copper plated inside. They'd go bang, because basically speaking, you'd be shorting the meter out inside. And it just made a real mess. You'd possibly blow the main fuse. You'd probably get quite significant hand burns. And the other thing is this crocodile clip thing. If you poke those wires up and then tried to connect the crocodile clip, that crocodile clip's live. It means voltage via the transformer. And if you were disconnecting this, you thought, I'll just disconnect that first, and you grabbed a copper pipe and you pulled the clip off, you'd have 240 volts across you back in an era. Well, back in an era before RCDs, and it would be before the distribution board anyway, so even in the current era, you wouldn't have that protection. A much more sensible way to me to do it would have been to have the primary just run with a flex to a plug, because that would have worked. I mean, all it needed was a 240 volt powered primary. So the ways that the electricity board got around these things, well, first of all, if people did use these excessively, it overheated the insides, because instead of being sensible about it, these things used to be potted, and they used to be potted in resin so you couldn't see what was inside them. These things were just made far too powerful. They put in really big sort of building site type boxes, and They put far too much current. It spun the meter back quite quickly, but it also overheated them inside. So the electricity board would be looking for scorch marks in the terminals. They'd be looking for overheating the coils inside, and also they'd be looking for meters blown off the wall with big skid marks underneath, and blown fuses, because, well, it was pretty obvious when someone had used one of these. But it's kind of interesting. It's got that fascination of devices that were kind of illegal, but intriguing in the same way. I did actually get a meter at a skip, and I tried it. I basically got a transformer and wound, so it wasn't a very powerful transformer, it was just to prove a point. I cut off the secondary and just wound a couple of tight windings around it. I think it was a halogen lighting transformer, and just hooked the meter up with just a plug, and then tried it, and it did indeed make the meter spin backwards. But as I say, you can't do it with modern meters. They will invariably, a flag will move out if it's a mechanical meter, or if it's a digital electronic meter, even a smart meter, the ones that can communicate, it'll simply grass you in. So interesting from a historical perspective, but really, really not a good idea these